As is the mayor's tradition here, um, our hearts and prayers are out to all the families that have lost somebody throughout this pandemic. The numbers continue to go up, and pray for we pray for the country. Um, the first thing on the agenda is to go over the minutes from the September 9th board meeting. You've all been given copies. Um, so review them. I'm sure you have, or if you haven't, take a quick look. It was a short meeting. We didn't talk about too many things, but if you have any corrections, additions, deletions, anything, what have you, now would be the time to pipe up regarding those minutes.
David did have one correct grammatical correction in the fourth paragraph up from the bottom, just so you all know.
Yes, we've corrected
was changed.
that. But that was just a minor
grammatical
one that we don't want to have in the formal record. But then in terms of the gist of the meeting and the actual facts, they're in front of you. And some of those things are still ongoing, as you know, and some of them were just informational. We did not have any village laws or motions of any sort to move forward on much new business, so there it is. Any comments?
Nope. I don't think so.
Okay, those minutes will stand as they are with the one grammatical correction. Okay, the next thing, number 3, is a discussion on the usage of the village hall. This is by Terry Ann Montoya, and maybe Linda can address it because she talked to Terry Ann is not going to be joining us in the meeting, but Linda can explain what Terry Ann is requesting.
Terry Ann is not going to be doing Zumba. She wants to do a smaller strength training for people with approximately 20 people or less upstairs at the fire station. So it's less people than Zumba in order to keep the 6 foot, etc. But I told her I'd bring it to the board because we obviously haven't had anybody rent the fire hall out since the pandemic. And I wasn't sure where the board's decision was going to be on whether we're ready to do that upstairs or not yet. The cleaners have not been back in there since the pandemic started, and it's been closed. So you're talking February, March?
Yeah. Sandy and our guys have been up there to put stuff in storage, but I didn't, I'm sure it would be a kind of a basic cleaning. But, and as you know, Josh works for the village now, so I asked him, there's one more, he said she's been having this strength training during the good weather outdoors, and it's very popular. They're all keeping their distance and they're doing the strength, but the weather's going to be turning, and they don't want her to stop doing it. It's her clientele that's asking to can't we go inside again? So that's where the impetus is, and that's the background. So she's requesting the board for approval to do just that.
We know what evening she'll.
She didn't say. She did not say, Bob.
I mean, we say, no one's, I know the fire department's had their monthly meetings in there.
Right,
Wednesdays, right?
And they're
she works
on a Tuesday.
Right, but they unless they've changed. I mean, she knows what their schedule is. She would work around the fire department's schedule regarding that. Any other comments, questions?
Any requirements on our part as far as the governor's requests? I assume all contact tracing and things like that would be the responsibility of Terry Ann in that regard.
Nate, that would be you.
So this is, I think, the first I've heard of would this be a lease then? I mean,
She'd be a rental. She'd be a renter for the space on 2 nights a week to do it.
So this is a for-profit business.
Yes.
So I guess I've got a few concerns about that, only because when you lease municipal property like this to a for-profit business, then you're potentially converting part of the fire hall into a taxable structure. You know, right now it's tax exempt, but now it's going to be a for-profit business running out of it. So real property taxes could potentially apply to that. That would be something we'd have to work through with the county and the town assessor as to how that would work and be calculated. And then you'd also need to somehow declare this space sort of surplus. If this was like a community room that you allowed any group to use for a sort of nominal fee, then maybe that would be different somehow. But I think I'd need to know a little more about what
We
this
actually
is.
have a contract that Jeff Jacobs prepared for us that they would sign.
Mhm.
So Jeff was on it when it was first established by the board to go ahead and rent out.
And I
Right.
do think, Nate, that the way we've always held it is what your latter thing about it being a community room that many people, other people.
Anybody can come in and use it for a nominal fee.
Yes.
And they have for a wedding reception, for example, or some sort of one-shot deal. We've had rentals on that for many years.
Right.
Not many rentals, but many years.
Matter
So
of fact,
it's,
Terry Ann has done this for a long time with Zumba, using the facility, but that was before COVID. So I think that the question comes into play now, since COVID has happened, is that going to cause any more issues for us?
right, and is this room like kind of a first come, first serve type of thing?
They have to call and register and fill out a form application through the office.
Right, okay.
And then
So, okay,
we go
that
through the
makes
whole
me,
process.
makes me feel a lot more comfortable with it. So then I think for the questions about what to do with contact tracing and those things, I think that you would require any group who's using the space to provide a COVID-19 safety plan, or kind of like the reopening plan that everyone has to have. It used to be a reopening plan. Now it's just the COVID-19 plan. You need to show it to us. It needs to be satisfactory to the Department of Health, because if anybody's doing a business, I think they're supposed to submit this plan to the state.
Yes.
And so she'd have to show that she's done that. And then
Yeah,
you want to make sure.
The closest kind of business that comes to mind is the gyms and health clubs around that had to go through that sort of protocol.
Right. Yep. And so she'd need to show that she's complied with all of those things. And then you'd need to decide whether or not the space, who is any community group that takes the space over for a period of time responsible for cleaning, sanitizing it once they're finished with it. I would assume you'd want that, because there's certainly a cost associated with it. In the sense of just the time to pay an employee to do it,
Right.
or to do it, if the community group's just going to do it, great. But if they're going to require, or if the village has to do it, who's doing that?
Right.
And what's their hourly rate? How much supplies are we going to need to do it?
We actually have a cleaner that we have who hasn't done it because obviously everything was shut down. So she hasn't done it since that time. So that's all. We already have that.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll talk to your cleaner and see if the cleaner is going to change their pricing, because cleaning for COVID is a bit different than just a typical cleaning.
Absolutely.
Well, and not only that, but if I'm not totally up to date on the COVID everything, but like the gyms, for example, didn't they have to put in new ventilation into a gym to reopen it?
I
So
believe so.
that's not something that's even optional where we are. She's not going to be able to put in ventilation up there. So I'm not sure if she'd be held to that, or how would we find out what guidelines she needs to follow, or is that her responsibility?
I think you would want to make it her responsibility. So that would be her reaching out to the Department of Health and putting together a safety plan and confirming that our space is suitable or adequate. And we'd probably want her to submit a letter or some indication from the Department of Health that she can operate in this space. Because you're right, we don't want to be responsible for it.
Right.
Okay, that all sounds doable.
And I'm just looking really quickly. I think I found you have to schedule a local health department inspection of the facility in which you're going to be holding a fitness class. And so that's exactly what kind of I was talking about. The Department of Health would likely need to come and look at the space.
She would have to schedule a health department.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All we really need to know tonight then, if it's the sense of the board that having done these things, if Terry Ann does these things, agrees to do these things and does them, is this something that we want to have happen? And that's all the board can really do tonight. Explain to her what needs to happen, but not only that, if it happens, then she can, proceed. Do we have a sense of the board, do you think, on that? Or somebody want to make a motion, or how do you want to proceed?
I think if she follows the things Nate has said, I would be certainly open to having her do her exercise class. She's not doing Zumba because she knows that would be
Correct.
impossible to do in that space.
Right.
So I would be open to it, but I do agree with Nate. I think there has to be some plan in place, whether even including, having her have a sign up list or something every night that she, so that contact tracing can happen, names and addresses of the people who are in that room.
That will probably be part of the health department's requirements.
Oh,
I'm gonna guess. Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah, and we would want a request to be notified in the event of any exposure. So
Yeah.
the fire department could be notified. So they're not having meetings in the same room if something were to happen.
Without it being cleaned and sanitized, et cetera,
Mhm.
a deep clean. So
So-
is that a motion, Bob? I'm just curious.
I'm not sure are we at a point where we need to make a motion, or do we need to see if she's willing and able to follow through on the thing?
Well, we at least need the
need
sense
that
of the body, so she knows if she does it, then she's
And
going to be able to go forward. Because
I-
if we didn't want her to do it, now would be the time to say, no, we don't want to get involved, and then she wouldn't have to go through the motions.
And I guess I've said my sense is I'd do it if she complies with the health department's request. I do think she needs to be cognizant of the fact that if another wave, if infections begin to get out of hand here in the state again, we may have to close it right back down.
Right,
So,
and
I
she
think
may
everybody
just,
needs to keep that in mind.
right, and she may just decide that all these things she needs to do might be too much trouble in the first place, so, but that's very possible.
I agree with Bob.
I also agree with Bob.
Okay,
Yes.
and I do too, and I'm going to take that as a sense of the body that, okay, we'll tell Terry Ann what she needs to do to make it happen, but if she does, then the chances are pretty good that it will happen. Is that fair enough?
Mhm.
Okay. Let's move on. Number 4, the discussion of the hot water heater. This hot water heater would be at the water treatment plant. Linda has some information on that as well.
Actually, in your Dropbox was a quote for the replacement for the part. He actually got, when I saw it first, I'm like $1,200, almost $2,500 for, sorry, $1,250 almost. I about died for a hot water heater. But after talking with Jeff, it's actually 2 different water heaters that he got estimates for. So the estimate, so you have 2 different ones to pick from. The hot water tank that we have right now got a leak, lost water, and so they've had problems with it. It needs to be replaced. The problem being is that it's the electrical is much the 208, 240 volt. I mean, it's the bigger electric. He wants
Three-phase.
to go with a smaller tank and an on-demand system type of thing versus having a big, huge tank that they just don't need down there. So the two quotes are on the same page. One is $515.68, and the other one is $725.65. He didn't give me his thoughts as to which one he wants. He just provided the quote for the two.
So the bigger one, though, I'm assuming is the $725 one that he was
The
talking
second
about.
one is, yeah, the 19-gallon.
So I'm guessing that's probably the one that he's more.
He didn't say. He didn't lead me either way.
Are they
Okay.
both on demand?
I don't know that answer. I don't think so. I'm not sure. I don't know that.
I
My
think
guess would be the small one would be on demand.
Even that's a lot of gallons. to
19 is
have
still a
Yes.
lot.
an on-demand.
It is a
Right.
lot for on demand. I agree.
all things being equal, on-demand heaters are generally a little bit more expensive, but the selling point being that the payback over time is you save money on electricity. But
And we need it there, for God's sakes. We really do.
I would favor a smaller one just because of what was just said, is that we don't need to have the tank holding water for days at a time that is not necessarily being used.
So I'd be if we knew that second line item was an on-demand heater, I'd be in favor of paying an extra $200 to get an on-demand water heater.
Yeah, I agree. Especially for that kind of a situation, instead of trying to keep it all warm 2, 3, 4 days in a row and not using it, it just makes a lot more sense for on demand.
So is that a motion in a second?
I
Sure.
feel like it was.
But it's dependent upon
We
that.
could
Right,
phrase
I
it.
got that on there. Okay.
We could
it-
also, maybe we could phrase it that checking with Jeff there is that the board wants to buy the on-demand, whichever one is the on-demand one, or if they're both on-demand one, the cheaper one,
The better price.
Yes.
better price. But that way we could close the books on what the board is actually approving without going back and forth. So if we do it that way, is everybody good with that?
Yes.
It's,
Okay, and I'm good with that too. So we could consider that a motion, and somebody did second that, right?
Danielle did. Bob?
Okay, and so I'll call the vote.
Bob,
Bob?
I've got a question.
Okay,
it's not even a question as much as a statement. I'm really not sure if either of the, I have an on-demand system in my house, and the amount of the reservoir, rather than heating a tank of water and keeping it hot, my reservoir is only a gallon or two.
I'm
right.
looking online. I actually found that item online at the FW Web website, and it does not look like an on-demand.
The second one?
It looks like it. Let me see if I can. Can I show my screen?
I don't know. Can you?
Well, can you get it? Can you get your camera in front of the screen?
He's on the same
What
screen.
do you think? I'm a computer guy? One
The
second.
other thing is we could kick it back to Jeff and clarify that.
Hold on a second. Let's see what I can do here. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah, how many gallons is it?
That's the 19-gallon, 4.5 kilowatt, 208 volt tank.
That looks like a 19-gallon tank.
It's a tank. It's not an on-demand.
Yeah.
It's not an on-demand heater, which will be
Well, based on that, I would suggest maybe we should kick this back to Jeff. It's not an emergency. And we want to be clear on what we're really getting into here, I think. We want to make sure it's on demand, and being that it's on demand, like Bob said, how big does it really have to be?
It doesn't need to be big at all.
Exactly.
mine, which is a household size one, I will say, is maybe 4 feet by 2 feet, and it hangs on the wall. And it has plates inside that heat the water as it flows through the tank and over it. And it has a small reservoir to kick it off, but it's flat. It's not a tank at all.
Well, I'm under the impression that the reason for the hot water at the plant is similar to what a house uses anyway. I don't think they use it too much in the process. I think it's for keeping clean.
Right.
So, that's my guess. But maybe we should kick it back to Jeff and have it clarified and indicate that what the board has said, and that we really want him to look further at it and make sure we're getting an on-demand and maybe smaller.
And what he wants. I mean, I would appreciate just let us know what you want. I mean, you can give us the second quote if you want, but
Right, right.
which of these two is what he's after, or is it not neither of them what he's after?
We could do that. We could tell them, okay, the board's in favor of the idea, but we have to hone in on what the actual idea is. What do you want? And maybe come back to that. Does that sound like a plan?
Sounds
Yes.
good to me.
Okay, that's what we'll do. We'll come back to that. Go to item 5. This is regarding our parking lot and vehicle problems. We were advised by the troopers when I had the meeting with them that they were washing their hands of the whole thing because I had a meeting in the trooper's office here, and the guy called up his supervisor and hashed it out while I was standing there. And the bottom line was they were very helpful. They had some suggestions, but they said it's the village's problem because it's not on a highway or a street, which they would do, and they don't have a holding area themselves, like we're led to believe. But the thing is, he suggested we have a sign, probably multiple signs up in the lot, or maybe several lots, saying that if there's an unintended vehicle for more than 72 hours, and lay it out in a sign. And also, it comes to mind that we should button up our local laws regarding this. We don't really have anything that really covers this issue. So we were thinking that maybe we should amend or have a new local law exactly indicating what our stance is on abandoned vehicles in municipal lots. So that's where Nate comes in. Nate, where do we stand on that?
Well, Mayor, I think I agree with you. The setup or the framework for discussion is whether or not the board would like to amend its existing laws or adopt a new law, or pass a simple resolution and prohibit through regulation parking, for an extended period of time like that. I think either would accomplish what you're looking to do. It's insofar as you're talking about regulating parking within the village lot. Because the village, think of it this way, the village has every right as the owner of property to remove vehicles that have been left too long. Similar, like if someone who owns a private lot has someone's car parked there for an extended period of time, the private lot owner can have that car towed, and that's where you would you need to put on a sign, just like the troopers said, parking over 72 continuous hours or whatever the number is, violators will be towed. You can contact number to discover or find out where your car has been towed to and to pick it up. That you could do, I think, just by regulation. If you do a local law, we could include all of this in a local law, but then you could also issue a fine to the person and take them to village court to take action on the fine. It could be a violation of the code. And so it's kind of a question for the board. Which way would you like to go? Do you want to include a mechanism to levy a fine against someone in addition to being able to just remove, to call the local tow company and have them towed, or what you would like to do for that?
Before we answer those kind of questions, based on what you said, Nate, I'm assuming the several other so-called municipal lots in the village are not owned by us. We lease them, and that would put the onus on the owners of those lots to deal with it. Am I correct in that?
If the village leases the lot, I would need to look at the lease. And I know Linda sent me a lease that she said actually isn't in effect anymore. But if the village is leasing the lot, I'm presuming the lease would give the village control over it, and you would be able to set a regulation. You would be able to set a regulation kind of like what I'm talking about. If the village doesn't lease the lot,
We
like,
don't lease,
and I,
we
This
don't
lot-
lease a lot permanently. I mean, there's certain hours that we lease a lot. So if a car was kept there, it would, one's the funeral home and one's the American Legion. Okay, they use the lots, we use the lots. There's only certain times we can use the lots. It's for overflow parking, and we're more apt to use the lots that is in question with this car here. But we don't need
yeah,
to dwell.
so I think the difference there is kind of like what you've been saying. The funeral home and the American Legion, it's a temporary arrangement that they, as entities, allow the village to utilize their parking lots on an as needed temporary basis. So it would be on the funeral home and the American Legion
Right.
to put a sign up and regulate the parking in those lots.
Right. So the lot that we're having issues with is the one that's in the diagram and the GIS map that I sent. That's the one that we actually own.
Right, and that's where the car is, and where the other cars were that were removed. The other question that might come up, I'll ask the question, so somebody else might have thought to ask it, is that what happens to the car once it's towed? The village would make arrangements. It's on the village to make arrangements with somebody to tow it, and that's where the car owner can go and claim it and pay the towing charges and so on. It is possible, of course, that nobody ever comes to claim it. In that case, the village would be stuck with the tow bill, just so you know.
Right. Yeah, usually in a situation where a tow company tows a vehicle, I believe the tow company actually gets a lien on the vehicle itself. And so if someone doesn't claim the vehicle or pay the towing charge, there's a mechanism under state law for the towing company to actually take title to the vehicle after a certain period of time. And that's something that we could work out with the towing company, through a contract, and just kind of, we could set the charge that the towing company pays, or excuse me, that the towing company charges to whoever's cars this is. It could be right in the contracts. So that way folks aren't really surprised, or the towing company can't say, oh, it's $500 or whatever the number is. It could be, we could keep them the towing company kind of honest on something like that.
I have way in the back of my head somewhere that we had a problem with towing before, years and years and years ago. And the local towing companies were very reluctant to join with the village in the process of doing that, because I remember one operator saying, if I tow it and I have to keep it at my place of business, somebody who's angry is going to come break into my business to get their car back. And I just seem to remember that there was a problem getting local tow companies to do the towing.
Yeah, I mean, that type of concern is really an insurance question. If someone comes and breaks into my property and breaks my fence, damages vehicles that are there, and in the process removes their own vehicle, is that an insurable claim? I think it is. And that would be where I'd say to the towing company, you need to talk to your insurance agent to just understand what type of coverage you have and whether or not the concern is addressed by your current insurance. If it's not, and we can get it, then I think it would be reasonable for the towing company to say to the village,
Okay.
listen, you're asking me to take on an additional insurable risk. It's going to be an additional, whatever the number is in premium. Please pay that to me.
Okay.
And in exchange, I'll do the towing.
More to the point, to answer Bob's question, the trooper, they use several towing companies, and they named them. They like I said, they don't have a impoundment place or something. They have arrangements with a couple towing companies that do this on a regular basis. So the idea would be to use somebody who does it on a regular basis, and so that kind of concern they already are dealing with. Any other comments? Um, do we favor a resolution over a local law? Does anybody want to comment on that?
Is a full local law actually required? I mean,
Well, it comes down to whether or not you would, in addition to towing, like to impose a fine on someone. So currently it's not against your code. There is no penalty for keeping the car beyond any set period of time. And then the penalty, and if you adopt a regulation that says no parking over 72 hours over towing, there's no fine attached to that. To do a local, or to include a fine, you would need to pass, I think, a local law that contains the fine, or that gives the enforcement mechanism for it.
Sounds to me like the resolution would be the better way to go there. I don't think, and I may be wrong, there may be another opinion out there. I don't think we really are concerned too much about making money on a few bucks for a fine as much as dealing with an issue as it occurs. And it sounds like a resolution might be the way to go.
I think so as well.
And so then I think what I would ask is, instead of doing a resolution tonight, I'll put one together and send it around to everybody. And in it, I think we'll address kind of, I'll want to think of some issues. There's a few policy pieces to this, essentially, that I think would go into the resolution. So what's the length of time? Do you want are vehicles subject to towing if there's snow? If there's more than 2 inches of snow, is it not 72 hours now? It's like within 4 hours of 2 inches of snow coming down, you have to move. That type of an issue, because you're going to want to plow the thing at some point. And if there's vehicles everywhere, you can't really do that very well. And there's a few other things I'll probably think of that I want to make sure we include in the resolution to be thorough.
That sounds like a good idea, to think it through and work it up as you see fit, and that would be the time for us. Now, at such time as we do that, I would, we'd probably consider 2 signs, I would think, one at each end of that parking lot, and we'll figure out how to word those signs after we do the resolution. But like I said, there's no urgency, because the sense of our parking attendant and our public works guys and me is that car will never be picked up. It's been there for going on 6 months now, and nobody seems to be. The troopers did run the plates and called the number that was attached, and several times, and I've asked them to continue doing that. I don't know how often they really have called, but they have not gotten anywhere with finding out where that person is, let alone talking to him. So their guess as well, the troopers' guess as well, was that he's not going to respond. So in any case, the car's there until we deal with it, and I'd like it to disappear magically, but anyway, Nate, that's a good idea. Why don't you do that then, and we'll come back to this issue next time.
Okay.
Okay. Number 6 is a discussion on operational plan for emergencies. Linda can talk to this. It's a new law that we need to follow.
Right, the governor came out with a new law. It's a pandemic preparedness law or something to that name of it. First, it came out with a 30-day, you had to have it done within 30 days. And so he's now extended out to, it has to be done by April 1st of 2021. This week I'm in NICOM sessions all week. So one of the sessions was on that already. So I'm getting some of the other municipalities' plans that they have in place that we can look at and help put together our plan from there. Plus take what our plan was already that Ryan had submitted to the state for opening up here, etc. So we could take all that stuff together to come up with our plan. So, but it's something we're going to move on, but not in the next week.
Right. Anybody have any questions regarding that requirement? As Linda said, we have some time, but it's good to, we're not going to wait till the last minute. Okay, very good. Now, the other thing is, next thing is old business. Does anybody have any old business? Well, the mayor, of course, has to have something. I won't, what I have is the LWRP. And as you know, we were awarded a contract, or we were awarded money from the state for our LWRP back in the spring. But with COVID, the whole thing kind of fell apart. We still have the contract. We still have the award, but the contract is somewhere in Albany, not being finalized. We've reached out several times. Toma has reached out several times. We reached out again as recently as today to find out what gives. Where do we stand? Now, whether we get an answer from the Department of State in the next day or two, or whether it's another one we don't, that they don't know, I'm gonna call Beth Lucas down at Broome County Planning within a few days anyway on this particular issue to see if the county can lend their weight to it. Now, here's why is this might work in our favor, is that I know, Beth, going back to the time when I was on the Broome County Flood Relief Task Force, and we worked on the LWRP plan that was finalized in 2011. The county has been told recently that they're going to be in line for their own LWRP money to do something like constructing a walking trail, multi-use trail along the riverbanks throughout the county, and wanted our input. I told Beth that, that we're waiting to find out what our own situation is, but more particularly, I'm going to ask her to speak to the state on the village's behalf and see if that will jiggle some strings, purse strings particularly, and see what we can do. We'd hate to lose this, but we don't want to make any commitments until we know we have it for sure. But that's the latest on LWRP. Okay, that's where we're at on that. Any questions on that or any other old business? If not, we'll move to new business. Does anybody have any new business?
Nope.
Well, of course the mayor does. And two things. One is, we all know we're in a drought, a water drought, water shortage drought. Now, regarding our situation in the village, the tank is in good shape. The level of water in the tank is good. However, the aquifer is declining because that aquifer is fed by the Tyopneoga River, which is running very low. And we're getting warning signals on some of our well pumps. We need to keep an eye on that. We're not going to panic. We're not going to do a formal emergency, but I'm asking the users, the village water users, to voluntarily cut back on water usage. Now, we're entering the season where this should automatically be occurring anyway. People aren't going to be using their swimming pools and doing things that they did in the summer maybe, but we need to make sure everybody's aware of this. I think something was put on Facebook
Yes, it was.
regarding that. Somehow or other, the reporter on Channel 12 got wind of it and called me this morning, wanted to come, put me on. I said, no, I'm not going to do TV, but this, I'll tell you exactly what you need to know, and that's this. I told him what I just told you, and I said, now, it's just a voluntary conservation at this point. We're hoping that things turn around and we get some rain and so on. But if it turns worse and it's going to be an emergency, I'll call you. You don't have to call me. And then we'll blast it out through the media that, we have various steps. We have them listed here on what you do during a water emergency. I've done it before, and we know what to do. We just don't want to have to do it. But that's, if any of your neighbors ask about it, that's the story. We think we're in good shape, but we just want to stay in good shape. And Scott and Josh are keeping an eye on those pumps every day. So that's, any question on that?
Thank you.
Okay. The other thing is Nate's company, Coughlin Gerhardt, is going to be giving this fall some training sessions for the planning board, which is you guys. You consider the planning board for this village as well as other hats, and the zoning board of appeals. That's who the in any in the mayor and the clerk and anybody else who wants to come. We used to. I attended many of these things at the Coughlin Gerhardt facility in past years, but now they're all done via Zoom. And I think you're going to all get an email, if you haven't already, regarding the schedule in the fall. And if you can attend, we'd love you to do it. There's 2 meetings in October, 1 in November, 1 in December, and they touch on different topics. But speaking from experience, and some of you have been to these seminars, I call them, but they're training sessions. Some of you have been to them in the past, and I always found that they were very informative. So just be aware that they're out there, and if you get a chance, you might be able to pick something up. But that's all I need to say about that, unless Nate wants to add to it.
I will be personally presenting the December 3rd case law update series. So I encourage you all to join. Everything, of course, but
Okay.
specifically.
Will Coughlin and Gerhardt be providing donuts to our homes?
Yes, we'll be personally delivering them to you. I'll do that myself. So.
Okay, well, we look forward to that, Nate. And at this point, we don't know how long this Zoom protocol is going to last, but I don't see any immediate end to it. And we'll see how that goes. But in any case, does anybody else have anything at all?
Yes, the abstract.
Yes, the abstract. Oh, you need to talk about, we need to do a budget modification.
Right.
Okay,
I'll need a motion for a budget modification.
okay. Does somebody want to give a motion to have a budget modification?
I'll move it.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second,
Okay, I'll call the vote. Bob,
yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Danielle.
Yes.
I'll also say yes. Linda, you have approval to do the budget modification. So be it.
So on the actual abstract itself, you will see abstract and then abstract. Hold on.
Correction.
Yeah, thank you. That correction was a last entry, came in for the water fund. It was a repayment of payment of for a bond. So that was the only one thing that changed on the water one. Everything else is the same. General is the same, sewer is the same, library is the same, T&A is the same.
Okay, very good. Linda's doing a good job minding the P's and Q's. One of the NICOM things she sat through was to tell clerk treasurers to mind their P's and Q's, and she's already doing it. So maybe you could have given that one, Linda.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody have anything else?
You need to vote on the abstract.
Need to vote, don't we?
Yeah, we need to vote.
Okay,
We need a
Anybody-
motion first to pay the bills.
first of all, did everybody have any questions on any of those bills? See, I skipped over
I'm
the
looking through them right now.
It was my fault. I skipped over number 2. The mayor jumped ahead. But any questions, comments? Okay, I want a motion to pay the bills.
Bob's reviewing. Give him a minute here, please.
Okay, all right.
Jason, while he's reviewing, have you heard of Zoom doing transcription?
No.
Several people during this NICOM conference have mentioned that Zoom does transcription. Nate, do you know about that?
I think you can do it in the settings of your Zoom
Yeah.
account.
Really?
Yeah, you can. And one of the requirements for
Is the
holding
transcription.
remote meetings is that you do a transcription.
Correct.
And I've seen several Zoom transcriptions. They're not great, but it's certainly a transcription of some sort.
And it wouldn't
and-
spend 2 days, 3 days trying to get the transcription done otherwise.
Right. You know, and or at least it's a starting place
Okay.
that you can then review and modify, you know, because some of the words as I'm speaking are garbled in the
Correct.
transcription, but it's a lot
Correct.
easier to work off that than doing it all from scratch.
Correct.
Yeah, it looks to be under the recording tab in the settings. Settings, recording, audio transcript. It's a checkbox
Yep.
you can check.
Okay.
That would be easier
It would be a
than
lot
what we're currently doing.
easier. So you done, Bob?
I'm good. I'll move that we pay the bills.
Okay,
So-
second.
Second.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote. Bob,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Danielle.
Yes.
I'll also say yes. And Linda, I apologize for skipping over the abstract. I
That's
was
not a
just.
problem.
It
He was
comes
all
with
excited
age, I
about the
think.
old business.
Oh
He
yeah.
was excited about the business.
Yeah. Well, I had to remember what I planned to say.
There you go.
Before I forgot, you know.
All right.
Okay, so
got it.
anybody have anything else? Now I think we're ready to adjourn. So this meeting is over. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Good night, guys.